All right. We are back to live. Okay. So we will resume back. We were sorry. Sometimes it freezes and then you just got to kind of reset it back up again. So hopefully we'll go the rest of the way here unscathed. But like I was saying, with Tiger's quote, it's just going to take some time. So with the stick drill, like I said, I would start with shorter and slower swings. Here's what you can do with the blue brick that I really like. Like I said, I would do this with a wedge. So again, the process is first we're gonna take the low hanging fruit first. So the low hanging fruit is ball position and make sure that we're getting our weight shift forward. That's really going to help you to get your hands more in front of the ball, right? So ball position, middle of stance, making sure that we have a good weight shift forward. There's also other benefits to that. I mean, if you're coming into contact and you're like this, odds are you're probably chunking and thinning a lot of shots as well, or even topping shots. So making your ball position be in a better spot and making sure that we're shifting our weight forward is also, a great way for you to more easily get those hands in front and then also get the good ball first contact. So that's step one. Step two is to work through the 20-minute shallowing fix and to make sure that our club face is closed enough. And by virtue of working through the 20-minute shallowing fix, we're going to make sure that our club face is closed enough coming down. So we just need to see the angle of this club angle down some amount at impact, or sorry, at club parallel to the ground, some amount, right? So that would be straight up and down. That would be angled up, and then that's angled down, right? So like I said, generally speaking, if we have good posture here, we're somewhat staying in our posture. That basically the leading edge of that club will kind of match the angle of my body, my spine here coming down, right? So that's the first piece. And then the second piece is to make sure, and like I said, I would do this with a wedge, that when we're coming down at lead arm parallel, that this club is a little bit flatter to this stick. It's okay if it's parallel to it, but it can't be steeper to it. If it's steeper to it, then basically what's going to happen is you are more than likely going to stand up out of your posture in an effort to try to get that club to work underneath. So if it's already kind of in a good shallow position, then you're going to be less likely to stand up out of it. So that's step two. Step three is if you still don't have shaft lean, right? You still are coming into impact, it's still not where you want to be, right? Now, keep in mind, not everyone needs to have pro level shaft lean, right? So what I would say is if you do step one, right, and you are, step one meaning ball position and weight shift forward. If you do step one and you like the height of your shots, then you're done. You don't have to do anymore, right? If it's still too high, right, because you're releasing the club early, then you go to step two, right? If you do step two where you're shallowing out the club, and again, there's benefits to step two as well because you're going to be more, you're gonna increase your ability to control your ball flight, right? You're going to have a much stronger and more consistent ball flight by virtue of working through the 20-minute shallowing fix, and you can use the blue brick to work through that. So let's say you do step two and it's still just too high. Now, you just have to have some shaft lean at impact. I don't want you to run into something that I run into with people that are really they're really focused on the positions that they're in instead of what's actually happening with their ball flight. Because I've had people that have come to me and we work on shaft lean, we get to where they have shaft lean, and then they say, "Hey Q, I can't hold a green. I'm hitting it too low. I can't hold a green." I was like, "Well, it's because you have more shaft lean, right? If you have too much shaft lean and not enough club head speed to go with that shaft lean, then you may end up hitting it too low, right? So that's why I'm saying look at your ball flight. If your ball flight is already kind of low and you don't really like the height, you want a little bit more height, right? Then I wouldn't keep trying to pursue more shaft lean because that's just going to make the ball go lower, right? So now if you're in that situation, step 3 would actually be, instead of going to work on the stick drill and what I was going to talk about next, would be to actually go work on getting more club head speed. Because if you can get more club head speed with the amount of shaft lean that you currently have, then the ball will actually start to go higher, and then you would actually be incentivized to lower it. And then also the added benefit is if you gain more club head speed, the ball will go farther. So each step of these, each step that we're talking about here, they're all things that are going to coincide with getting more shaft lean, but there's also added benefits, right? That are really, really important for playing good golf. So yeah. Now let's say you've done step one where you've changed your ball position, got your body more forward. Step 2, you're shallowing out the club. You've got the club in a good spot coming down. The club face is in a good spot coming down, but you're still hitting it too high. The next step is going to be to do the stick drill and to do it with the blue brick with the wedge launch. So basically, get to where you can get shaft lean with your wedges and with these kind of shorter chips or these chips and pitch shots, and then work your way up to longer and faster swings. There's a couple of reasons why I like to do it this way. So one is, like I said, this is the most difficult thing to change in the golf swing, right? When you got to this point where you've got all the low-hanging fruit stuff, it's just going to be really, really difficult from this point. So if you can get to where you can do it with a wedge, and you can do it with these short pitch shots and chips, well, that's something you can actually take to the course pretty quickly, right? You're not going to be able to take full speed, full swing swings where you're getting a ton of shaft lean to the course very quickly. That's going to take time. You have to work up to that. So that's why I like, let's get to where you can do it with a wedge. We want shaft lean with the wedge anyway, right? Let's get to where we can do it with a wedge in chips and short pitches, and then you just work your way up to longer and faster swings. So on the blue brick, again, this isn't, the shallowing stuff on the blue brick, that's the bread and butter of the blue brick, but the wedge stuff I think is often overlooked, and it's actually one of my favorite things that the blue brick does. So on here in the middle, what you're going to have is wedge impact, right? Wedge impact position. And what you're going to do for a right-handed golfer, we actually kind of figured out something for lefties that might get it close as well. I'll show you that. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the blue brick. I'm going to face it toward me to where I can read the print on here. I'll move this a little bit forward where it's not completely off the screen. There we go. And then I'm going to put it in that wedge impact position. And what this does is it gives me a frame of reference, just like we were talking about for shallowing out the club, getting it to match the stick. I want my impact position. If I put this ball in the middle, in the middle of this blue brick, right? And I would actually get to where you can do it in a practice swing first. Right? So I'm going to do this. And you can see, if I set up like this, you can see how this stick would actually be hitting me if I'm releasing it before the angle of the stick, right? If I do it correctly, right? Hopefully you give yourself a little bit more room here. I'm kind of up against the wall here because I want you guys to be able to see. But basically, I want to be coming in to my little chips and pitches, kind of like this, right? Getting my body forward, getting my hands forward, right? That, and get to where you can do it with the little chips and pitches. And again, it's going to be, I'm not throwing out the club. I'm turning my chest through. It's training you to a slower and shorter extent to turn your chest through without throwing the hands through. So this really just kind of helps me to simulate exactly the impact position that I want to be. The other cool part about it is the best players will launch their wedges 27 to 30 degrees. So there's actually a way that you can see. You don't have to have a TrackMan or anything to see what your launch angle is. You can just use the blue brick and some simple triangle trig math to be able to figure it out. So basically what you do is I'm going to put, if this is the ball that I'm hitting, I'm going to do 2 alignment stick lengths. Make sure you're using the same alignment stick, right? So I'm going to do 2 alignment stick lengths. I'm going to go there, and I'm going to go there. Move this out of the way. And then I'm going to take the blue brick, and on here, it says wedge launch angle. You can see it right there. It says wedge launch angle. I'm going to put that side closest to me, and then this is going to be at the end of that stick. All right, so I'm going to put it just like that. And I would maybe put a T in the ground next to your ball, so that way you know where to hit the ball from. And then I'm going to take another alignment stick. Again, I want to make sure we're using the same length alignment stick. So if you're using the blue brick ones, you'll be good. So now if I hit this ball and it launches at the tip of this stick, that's 30 degrees. So if I know I go above the tip of the stick, if it's launching up here, I know that I'm above 30 degrees, and I'm probably not getting the shaft lean that I need, right? And I would use like a 56, 60 degree wedge for this. If it's launching, anywhere from there to, a few inches down, I know that I'm in that probably 27 to 30 degree range. But, even if you get it way lower than that, that's even better, because that would be too much shaft lean. And the good part about it, here's the thing about making swing changes. Exaggerate as much as you possibly can, and have the mindset that you can't overdo it. Because the good part is, if you literally overdo it, then all you have to do is tone it down. That's all you have to do is tone it down. And that's a pretty easy thing to do, is to tone it down from what too much is. Usually what happens is that when we exaggerate, we just get much closer to where we want to be. But the good part is, if you overdo it, you can just tone it down. So that's basically how I'd work through it. Get to where you can do it with the wedge, and then work up to longer and faster swings with the wedge, launching it at this angle. And then once you can get to where you can get a full swing, where you're launching it at this angle and you're keeping this stick from whacking you in the side as you're coming through, then you start working your way up to the longer and faster swings, right? The last thing I wanted to address here is because you mentioned that you're losing a ton of distance, especially with your driver. It's possible that you are. It depends on how you're releasing the club. So what I would say is, if you are basically from the top of the swing just throwing it out very, very early, that's one thing. But if you're getting some lag, and then you're just releasing it early, and you don't have any shaft lean at impact with your driver, odds are you're probably not going to gain distance from doing this. So I just want to say that, because some people's expectation is that when they get the shaft lean, they're going to start really, really increasing their distance with the driver. It's not really the case. Where you're really going to notice it, though, is with the wedges. Because if you're hitting a lob wedge and you're coming into contact and you're like this, you're hitting it very high, right? Very, very high, hard to control. But then you come in and, in that situation, you're hitting a lob wedge, you're coming in, this ball's launching like this, right? Way above the stick. But then if you get to where it's, more like that, you realize it's like, it makes the biggest difference that you're going to see is actually with the wedges, which is part of the reason why I like to see people start with the wedges. Part of it is because that's where you're going to see the biggest difference. Part of it is because everyone needs to have a good amount of shaft lean with wedges, whether you're swinging slow or not, right? And the other part of it is it's much easier, shorter, slower swing, right? And then you can build up to longer and faster swings. And I didn't mention this, but this training aid, this is one that I like instead of using the stick. There's other ones out there, but this is the one that I use and like. It's called the Tor rotation stick. I'm pretty sure they still make it, but basically all you got to do, it just clamps on here, and then it works like that. So if you do I think they sell them on Amazon. Tor rotation stick is what it's called. You can do a Google search and might be able to find it. But like I said, they have other options. It's a little bit expensive. It is $50 for that, which I wish it was cheaper, but you know, product development is expensive. So I get why things are expensive. But there are some cheaper alternatives. But be careful. Some of them don't work that great. You know, compared to that. This is the one that I recommend. To me, it's worth the little extra cost. But if you want to, there's like $20 ones that don't work quite as well as that, but are better. That would be better than using an alignment stick. All right, so Don says, if you don't have the brick, where do you put the alignment stick and at what angle so that you practice shadowing? So a way, if you're wanting to put the stick into the ground, what I would do is I would use the lie angle of the club. That'll get you really, really close. So basically, if I take this club and I have it flush to the ground, so it's not toe down or heel down or anything like that. It's flush to the ground. Well, it's going to create an angle. The shaft is going to create an angle between the ground and the shaft, right? So that's the angle that I would put it in. So basically, the way you could do it is like, okay, I'm going to hold my club. I got a wedge right here. I got this club flush to the ground and the face square. I'm going to put this stick in the ground at this exact same angle, right? It's going to get you pretty darn close, right? Let me actually, we can kind of check that here. Because the actual angle for a wedge is like 62 degrees. For your 6-iron, it's going to be like 60 degrees. And then for a driver, it's going to be like 45 to 50 degrees, somewhere in there. Really, if you do 60 degrees, it's going to be pretty darn close with pretty much every club except your driver and 3-wood, just because those clubs are just so much longer than the rest of the clubs. But you're going to be pretty darn close if you use that. So let me do this. I'm going to put this in the, I'm going to test this here. So I'm going to put this in the wedge slot. It's actually the same wedge slot, but I just call it the wedge slot. And I'm going to take the swing plate here, which if you have a swing plate, you can use a swing plate. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to set this swing plate to where it's at the lie angle of the club. So let me get that to where it's, tell you what, that's pretty much it right there, maybe. Yeah, I would say that's pretty much the lie angle of the club. Now let's compare that to the blue brick. It's a hair more upright. Just a hair more upright. I would say, like I said, it's going to get you pretty close. Where where you want to get to kind of get it to where it's tightened up is you want to look at the shallowing line, and that's where you would look at on video, because this stick basically represents the angle of that line, right? So the way that you look at that is to video your swing from down the line. You got to make sure that you have good camera angle. Can't stress that enough. That's a big part of it, because if you have a bad camera angle, the video is going to tell you things that aren't actually going on, right? And it's really, really important to have a good camera angle, because you're looking at something that's 3D, but you're looking at it in 2D. So the perspective really matters when you're looking at it on a screen. So what you want to make sure that you do is you set up the camera down the toe line. Easy way to do that: take an alignment stick, throw it on the ground, point it at a target. And the way that I do that is I just get behind it and I just kind of line it up, right? I take my club, I get behind it, and I try to kind of line that up to get, line that up with the shaft kind of off in the distance. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my camera, and I'm going to, or my phone that I would normally use, right? And I'm going to line that up to where this is straight up and down on the screen, right? Not angled in any way. If you draw a vertical line on the screen, this is lined up with it, right? Then I want to have the camera at hip level, and then I want to have it far away enough from me to where me and the club stay in the frame throughout the entire swing. So this camera angle is actually, it's too high. It's about at this level, and it's also too close. If I bring this club back, you're going to see how it goes out. It goes out of the frame at the top. Now, if it barely goes out of frame, that's fine. But I get a lot of videos where it's kind of like this, where I never even see the club head throughout the entire swing. And it's just very difficult to know what's going on if that's the case. So try to get to where you and the entire club, stay in the frame throughout the entire swing. That's most ideal. If it barely goes out of frame, as you're going up to the top and then comes back into frame and barely goes out of frame, that's fine. Same thing like from face on. Like if it barely goes out of frame right there, that's fine. And then over here, if it barely goes out of frame, that's fine. But you want to keep it to where for at least 90 to 95% of the swing, that club is in the frame. So that way you can evaluate and see what's going on there. And if you're working with a coach such as myself or another coach, Ronnie, whoever you might be working with the online lessons, that's going to allow us to be able to evaluate things much more easily and be able to give you the best lesson possible, right? So if you want the best lesson possible, you want to provide the best videos possible, because otherwise, it's going to match, it's going to match the level of the video, because we may not be able to see what's going on. All right. So once you have the camera lined up and everything, when you go to hit the ball, you just want to make sure that your toes are up here close to that stick like this. And you want to make sure that your toes are pretty close to the same distance from the stick. So you don't want to be set up like this, right? You're going to set up with your toes close to the stick within an inch or two, and then about equally distant from the stick. So what I find a lot of people do is the ball is where the ball is, and the camera is where the camera is, and then they go to set up. Well, this is going to be a little off, right? So we want to make sure, set yourself up first, and then put the ball where it needs to be for you to be set up in the correct position, right? So, and if the ball can't be there, then you got to move around your setup so that you can have that, right? So yeah, once you've done that, and then you look at it on video, what you're going to do is you're going to draw a line from the ball up through the middle of your elbow, and you want the angle of the stick to match that line, right? So if I have that line and I got to make sure that I'm swinging just underneath that line, well, what I can do is I can set up my stick here to be just above that line, and now I just got to make sure that I swing underneath it, and I'll be in a good spot, right? So that's why I recommend videoing your swing that way. Like I said, the lie angle is going to get you really, really close, but as we just showed, it's probably a little bit too upright. So what I'd recommend doing is maybe getting it a little bit lower, and you'll be in a good spot. All right. If we got any more questions, keep them coming. And by the way, what I just went through there, as far as like the shaft lean is concerned, like work on getting shaft lean, that's basically what I do with students, right? First thing that I do, if I have a student that says, "Hey, I want to get more shaft lean," right? Well, the first thing I ask them is, "You want to hit the ball higher, or do you like the height of your shots? Do you want to hit the ball higher, or do you want to hit the ball lower?" Right? So if the answer is I'd like to hit the ball higher, then we're working on the wrong thing, right? Because again, this is where a lot of people run into. We're chasing positions, right? We're trying to get in certain positions instead of focusing on what we want to have happen with our ball flight, right? Because positions, have an effect on your ball flight. So what you want to kind of look at is my ball flight too high or too low? I was in a situation when I played college golf, right? That I hit the ball really high, and there's pros and cons to that. There's more cons, I would say. It's harder to control, and you lose distance, right? So especially in windy conditions, and I played in windy conditions, so I had to kind of figure out how to hit it lower. And what I did is I would use lower lofted clubs and choke up. I put the ball more back in my stance when I needed to hit it lower. And I would try to do things in my swing. It's just like, in the middle of a college season, it's very difficult to work through a change, right? Because you're probably going to play bad, when you're working through a change. A lot of times you're more consistent typically when you're going through a change in your swing. So, yeah, I opted not to do that, and but after the fact, I worked on it because I had a good amount of speed, and I was just hitting big moon balls, like my 9-iron was just going a mile high in the air, right? So that's why I worked on getting more shaft lean, and then I got my ball flight to be where it needed to be, or where I liked it, and that resulted, my impact position kind of looks like this, right? So you might look at my impact position and think, well, Dustin Johnson, he looks like that. Shouldn't you be like that? I don't have as much club head speed as Dustin Johnson. And Dustin Johnson might prefer a lower flight. Dustin Johnson might also have clubs that actually help him to hit it a little bit higher with the amount of shaft lean that he has. I don't know. He might have a shaft that's a high launch shaft because for him, he naturally has a ton of shaft lean, right? So, there's things that go into it that lead to that. But that's what I would look at first. That's what I would ask yourself first. If you're going to chase the shaft lean thing, then what I would think about is, do I want to hit the ball higher or lower, or do I like the flight of my shots? If you like the flight of your shots right now, and you're not hitting it thin, right? So keep that in mind. Is a lot of times if we release it very early, we'll hit it thin, and then thin shots will fly lower, right? So there's a possibility you could get more shaft lean and actually hit the ball higher because your strike gets to be a little bit higher on the face. But if you're constantly hitting thin shots, and you like the height of your shots, well, that's a different story, right? You probably need to get shaft lean to get rid of those shots, to get rid of those thin shots, so that way you're hitting it more solidly. Thin shots often don't kill you that much. It's really more into the wind because it's more spinny. Thin shot is. So typically you hit it thin. If you hit it into the wind, it's just going to balloon up. It's not going to go much of anywhere. So that's why that's not ideal. But a lot of times you can get away with it a little bit. So, but yeah, that's kind of what I would recommend doing. Think about if you want to hit it higher or lower. If you want to hit it, if you have a lot of speed and you're hitting big moon balls like I was talking about, then yeah, shaft lean is definitely where you want to go, and I would go through that process that I just talked about. Right. So, all right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Thanks everyone for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Again, where should I put the ball in relation to the alignment stick? I put in the ground. Yeah. So I would put the alignment stick. Sorry, I'll answer. I didn't see that question. So basically, I put the ball roughly, 6. It really depends on how much you're coming down steep. So if you're coming down really steep, I'd probably put the ball, 1.5 foot inside the stick. Now, it's still going to enable you to come down a little steep, but you're going to be less likely to hit the stick. So you don't want to, if you're someone who is, let me put the blue brick down. I know you don't have blue brick, but just kind of for reference here. But so let me put the other stick down too. All right. So if I have this set up, and let's say, for the blue brick, I'm going to put the ball about a club head inside of that stick, which would roughly put it, 7-8 inches to the inside of where the stick would be intersecting with the ground. If I put it there, I really don't have hardly any room to come down steep. But if you're someone who's really coming down over the top and you put that stick there and you just kind of make like a normal swing, you're probably going to hit it, right? So what I would do first and foremost is I would give yourself more space, right? And then as you get better at that and you're exaggerating, you look on video and you see, oh, I'm not even close to hitting it. Then I would start to move a little bit closer and closer to it until you get to where you're about 6 inches from the stick. So if this alignment stick was entering the ground, if there was another stick from there that just pointed straight toward the target, then you would be about 6 inches inside of that. That'd be kind of the ending point. You would know there's really no room to steepen the club, but you may need to work toward that. So I would start out far away from it at first and see if that helps you to get into a better position, right? And hey, if you have it really far away and you're coming down in a great position, then you don't need to mess with it. It's making you do what you need to do, all right? Then as far as how far back it goes, really what we want to make sure of is that it covers the club going back, right? So it can be anywhere from, like, if I'm coming down, what you can do is bring your hands to in front of your trail thigh here and have the club parallel to the ground. You'd want the club to be at least covering that. You can also put it to where it's kind of covering your hand as you're coming down. So if you go to lead arm parallel and you go to like where your hand is, you can have it there. So anywhere kind of in that range is going to work good. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but I would just kind of set it up to where we're making sure that the club is working underneath it, right, coming down. And if you want your hands to be working underneath it as well, I would just move it a little bit closer to get the hands underneath it. Really depends on what you might be working on. If you're working on more hand path versus club path, right, then you might want to put it more on your hands. If you're wanting to work on more club, then you'd want to put it maybe more toward the club. And then as far as outside the ball, like I said, I would start farther away, look at it on video, see how it's going. One thing I want to mention here is that, you know, a lot of people hit the stick, right? So what we have to understand is that there's nothing magic about that stick being there that's just going to make you swing differently, right? You actually have to do it. The stick is just a reference. It's just a guiding point to kind of show you, like, here's how the club needs to be going down. So the expectation can't be, I'm going to put this stick down and then I'm just going to shallow the club automatically. You're going to have to actually do it. And that's part of why I like this, is that, you know, it makes you do it, right? There's nothing here that's necessarily making it to where you're just going to do it. You still have to do it. So that's the only way you're going to learn to do it, is if you actually have to do it. Now, if you have something that's actually forcing the club, you know, in you to go underneath, that's not really training you to actually do it. It's just forcing the club. Now, once you take that thing off, you're probably going to go back to what you're doing before. But if we have the stick there and we learn to swing underneath that stick and we get comfortable with it there, and we get to a point to where I don't even need to have the stick there at all, I'm just going to do it anyway. You check it on video. And I would also, when you take the stick away, I pretend like it's still there, right? And then, you know, keep thinking that until essentially you don't have to anymore, right? Once you get to a point to where, okay, I didn't think about the stick that time and I still got the club to work down in a good spot, then you're good to go. So that's the way I would work through it. All right, we'll wrap it up right there. Sorry, Don, I want to get that last question there. Thanks everybody for joining me. Like I said, we'll be back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Have a good one. We'll talk to you next time.